Hey, what's going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be reviewing The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien and explaining why I gave this book a 5 out of 5. There's a reason why Tolkien is considered a master of fantasy, and it definitely shows in this book. Incredible world building, incredible descriptions of landscapes and language and songs that all these characters sing, and the interactions between each of the characters, which are similar to the movie, but refreshing in their own way. So I've seen the Lord of the Rings movies countless times. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen them, and I love them. And I applaud the screenwriters for adapting a screenplay into the movie, because after reading the book, it would not have been an easy task. The dialogue in the book is very different from the dialogue in the movie, and I see why the filmmakers made certain decisions that they did after reading the book. A lot of the book stuff, you know, the story is still the same, where Frodo is tasked with he gets a hold of the One Ring and has to travel to Mordor to destroy it. That's the same. But there are a lot of differences between the movie and the book. So reading the book felt familiar and it felt comforting, but it was almost like reading an entirely new story, as if someone else had come out with a different movie of the same thing, but had like a different interpretation of it. So I think I'm glad that I read this book when I did. So I read it last year, 2021. And I'm glad that I saved it for that time, because I remember having the opportunity to read it when I was in like elementary school, but I don't think I would have appreciated everything that was going on in the book at that time. For example, Frodo is actually in the book when Gandalf comes to meet him at the beginning for Bilbo's birthday party. He's actually like 33 years old in the book, and for hobbits, that's considered our equivalent of like 18. So he's just legally become an adult, but not quite, adult fully. And then Aragorn's personality is a lot more quirky in this book than in the movie, and that's kind of a theme that I've noticed with The Fellowship of the Ring, is that it's kind of like, it's still somber in the sense that it's a dangerous road ahead, but there's a lot of like bouncy, jovial dialogue, which would kind of feel weird in a movie, I think. But I think you'll find that a lot in fantasy epics, where there's just like a certain sort of energy that like hardcore fantasy has. There's songs written in the book, which I personally skip over, because I'm a musician, but I've for some reason just skipped over the songs. I know that's like a common, I don't want to say trope, but a common theme among fantasy novels is, what kind of songs are they going to sing? But for me, I kind of just skipped over them. And I'm kind of glad that they didn't sing it in the movie, because it would be kind of strange. But some of the differences between the book and the movie, when Gandalf goes away after Frodo obtains the ring, so Gandalf goes to find out and do research if this was actually the ring from Sauron. And in the movie, it made it seem like he came back a couple days later or a week later, but in the book, it's actually like 17 years. So by the time Gandalf comes back to tell Frodo, yeah, actually, this is the ring. I hope you still have it. 17 years has passed. It's like, I had like a class ring from like sophomore year of high school that I don't even know where it is now. Like, and that wasn't even 17 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just funny seeing that like, oh, you still have that tiny little ring, right? You didn't lose it. Aragorn's personality is a little bit, like I said, like more jovial and kind of almost like Dumbledore was in the first Harry Potter book. It's kind of like strange, kind of like a strange, goofy personality at times. But the writing that Tolkien has is just, I mean, it's almost like indescribable. I put wonderfully constructed passages overall. So it's not just the descriptions of the mountains and the fields that they go through. It's the relationships between, elves and dwarves. You can really feel the tension between them and how they hate each other. But then when they all go to Rivendell, when they're part of the Fellowship, and Legolas and Gimli are starting to grow on each other a little bit, it's the first time that a dwarf has been allowed to step foot in Rivendell in centuries, maybe. And they all start to kind of take a liking to him. Well, if Legolas says it's okay, he's highly respected here, we'll give you a chance. And then there's kind of like a bonding thing that happens. And they're like, oh, maybe dwarves aren't so bad, that type of thing. So one of the things that the book has that I wrote on page 248, Gollum was an escaped prisoner of Gandalf and the elves. But in the movie, they saw him in the mines of Moria as if it was no big deal. So in the movie version, it's like, oh yeah, that's Gollum following us. Like, you don't know who he is. Whereas Gandalf and the elves, I'm just trying to do this from memory. But apparently Gollum was a prisoner of Gandalf and the elves. I think similar to that scene in the movie where they show him getting tortured. Not that Gandalf or the elves tortured him, but they were holding on to him, I guess, to kind of get the same kind of information out. But the movie suggested that maybe Gandalf and Gollum had never crossed paths before or something like that. So there was a change there. Another huge thing that I found out reading the book, which I didn't know, and it was not made clear in the movies, and I've seen it countless times, and unless it was in like the extended edition, which I've never seen, or it was just not like I completely missed it. The whole reason that Sauron was building this army was to get the ring for himself. When in the movies, it makes it seem like he's trying to get the ring and raising these armies to fight for Sauron to get him the ring. But Saruman got corrupted by the ring's power, or the grandeur of how powerful he could become, because he and Gandalf are like 2 of 5 almost like immortal beings, and there's a whole bunch of lore that I kind of do a deep dive on YouTube for. But Saruman was getting all those armies to have the ring for himself, which was not made clear in the movie. So it was kind of a shock when I read that in the book. I put the book is comforting. I think I already said that. Yeah, and another thing that I didn't know is that it does say the Fellowship of the Ring being the first part of the Lord of the Rings. But when it was originally published, it was actually published as one large volume and just separated into 3 books. So it was one big book, but it would say book 1, Fellowship of the Ring, book 2, The Two Towers. But they conveniently sell it as 3 different parts. Big brain move there. So my edition of The Two Towers, which is, I was lucky enough to find the 3 editions that like look similar to this. The Two Towers actually starts on page, like, it's the first page, but it's like page 407 or something like that. So I was kind of skimming through it. I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird. So it made me do some, a little bit of research, and it was actually, one full volume, and you could still buy it that way. But I think the more common way to see them is, split up into individual sections here. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 because, everything that they say about Tolkien's writing is true. It's almost like I've been getting into H.P. Lovecraft recently, and Lovecraft just has a way with words that you can get a super clear picture on what he's trying to describe in his world and his story. And I feel like Tolkien is the equivalent of that, just in the fantasy realm. So it's really addicting, and I think I'm kind of glad that I saw the movies first, so I could put, faces to names, and I can recall certain situations. Same thing with like when I read Game of Thrones for the first time. I'm glad that I watched the show numerous times before I read that book, because, sometimes when you start these fantasy books, there's just so many names to remember, and it's not like they're names like, just regular names. It's Aragorn and Gandalf and Legolas and like weird, like, oh, I can't keep track of everybody, So I'm glad that I was already so familiar with the story. I could tell the differences between them. And I know there's some kind of like Lord of the Rings TV show coming out, like on Amazon. I don't know when that's coming out, what storyline it's going to be following. But if those trilogy movies hadn't been made, I could totally see an amazing movie or like television series. Like there's that much content in here that wasn't included in the movies that they could have really stretched it out and made like a full length series out of it for one of the streaming services. So, and this is the type of book that is written so well that I would probably read the trilogy over again. So I haven't started Two Towers yet. But once I do read through the rest of them, I wouldn't be surprised if I came back a couple years later to read the trilogy again, because it's just that you would enjoy reading it that much. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next book review video. See you later.